Welcome back to Online Darts, everyone. And here we are, the build-up to the World Championships, Chris. Exciting time of year.
Yeah, it really is that time of year. Once the Grand Slam starts, you've got the Players' Championship finals and then the Worlds. It's just really exciting, particularly when we've had so many players that are staking the claim to be at the deep end of the big one this year.
Yeah, look, I suppose it's an interesting time. We'll start with Peter Wright. Look, it's sad that obviously we haven't seen him at the Players' Championships due to Joe being ill, and we wish her all the best. But is it a slight concern that, one, obviously he played at the Grand Slam when his mind wasn't on darts for obvious reasons, and two, we haven't seen him throw a competitive dart until Alexandra Palace?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult. Obviously, family first, and we give our best wishes to Peter and Joanne. But I think you just never know, do you? I think that the type of tournament it is, it does give players a chance to play themselves into form over the course of the time there. However, Peter himself has been caught cold in opening rounds earlier. So, yeah, I think you can't really predict anything with Peter Wright. Predicting how far he's going to go is probably about as reliable as predicting which darts he's going to throw.
Michael van Gerwen, the current favourite for the World Championships, rightfully so?
Yeah, I think so. Him and Price for me. But yeah, I think it's between those two as the real front runners. He's won all the biggest events this year, but just that little sort of not doing so well at the Grand Slam. Obviously at the time of recording, I'm not sure or not whether he's won the Players' Championship finals, but yeah, I can see why he's favourite.
Is it a surprise that Price hasn't added a brackets major TV title to the CV in 22?
Massively, particularly the way he was playing at the start of the year when he's hitting all those 9 darters on TV, the performances in the Premier League, and you know how he ended last year, and he's run some massive numbers as well. So yeah, I think it's strange. Almost, yeah. I thought the Grand Slam was going to be the one. Barney put paid to that, and then a shock defeat here as well in Minehead. So yeah, I think it's a big surprise, but who knows? The biggest one might await him.
On Barney, the renaissance at the Slam came from absolutely nowhere, because we haven't seen the performances, the numbers, or the mannerisms that we saw from Barney anywhere else this year.
Yeah, really unexpected. Particularly, I mean, the one that stands out for me was the performance against Simon Whitlock. Everyone's going to talk about the wins against Price, but Whitlock averaged 101 in that match, and we all thought it was 2012 again. But yeah, Barney was excellent in that tournament. Looked like he got the bit between his teeth, and I'm just hoping that defeat in the semi and then first round at the Players' Championship finals doesn't do what it used to do to him, because he'd be very deflated after any defeat, and he should be proud of what he's done.
Michael Smith, the monkey, has gone. We all said it would happen, and it was just a matter of time. He got there in the end. And do you believe now that he'll go on and not maybe conquer the world in brackets, but go on and win multiple TV titles?
Yeah, I think he'll win more. I think we're over an era where there are so many potential winners of every event that it's not going to be easy to go on runs of winning 2 or 3 for anyone. But I think you'd expect him to pick up probably a title a year for the next few years at worst. I do think that floodgates will open, so to speak, and I just think it's a massive achievement to get through the first one, because even though everyone has been saying it'll happen one day, it's never certain. Like, look at Dave Chisnell, for example, a man who was in a similar position years and years ago, and he's still yet to win one, so well done.
The interesting one at the Worlds, and I know you've been batting on social media the inclusion of Fallon Sherrock at the last minute. I think most realistic darts fans, the decision isn't the issue. It was more the timing of the decision.
Agreed, yeah. And I think one aspect of it that a lot of people seem to be overlooking is the fact that she played in the World Series events in Australia and New Zealand, which meant she couldn't go to the events in Germany. Now, even being runner-up to Bo in a couple of those events would have been enough for her to finish second. So to say she doesn't deserve to be in the World Championship, I think is the wrong thing to say. I actually think they both deserve to be in it. They are in it, but the timing of the announcement, the way it was handled, was maybe a little bit messier than it could have been.
Well, the surprising one for me is we interviewed Matt back at the Grand Prix, and we asked him about that famous 96 spot as it was, and he was like, do you know? And his answer was, yes, we know where it's going. So to the outside looking in, this decision was made even before a dart was thrown in that women's series, that potentially all 3 were going to Alexandra Palace.
Yeah, but potentially. I don't know the ins and outs of it. You spoke to him, if that's what he said.
Yeah,
that's
no,
what
they
he
said the decision
so,
was made then.
Yeah, so, yeah, again, when do you announce it? I mean, there was never going to be a right time. I do understand that as well, because if you announce it before they play a women's series, and what's the point of the women's series? How are other people going to feel towards her?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it was always a difficult thing, but having missed out, largely because she didn't play in the Women's Series because it was scheduled at the same time as the World Series, I do think that it was fair to put her in. And another point I would make is nobody's missing out here, that place was unallocated. She hasn't taken a place away from anybody. They haven't given her somebody else's spot. So I think there's probably a little bit more uproar than it needs to be.
And the other good bit that, again, seems to have been missing, the fact that from now on we also will have 3 ladies at the World Championship every year. This is not just a one-off to get Fallon Sherrock in. This is the continued evolution of the ladies' game, that from now on there will be 3.
That was the key part of the headline for me. The key part of the story for me, well, 2 key components were 3 women at the World Championship going forward and doubling the prize money in the Women's Series. Both fantastic things for the women game. The focus, as it always seems to be, was on Fallon, but actually those 2 stories are massive for the future of the women's game.
On the women's game, because I know you've done all the women's series and we talk about the ladies' game a lot. Also, the fact that the ADC have introduced the ladies' tour as well. Small to start with, a bit like the PDC women's series, but I'm guessing, obviously, that with the people involved with the ADC, that they won't clash with the PDC women's series as well. So this is huge for the ladies' game right now.
Great news, absolutely great news. The depth, I've noticed the depth is getting better on the women's series. Now, actually, this year, probably the top level wasn't quite as high as it had been in previous years. Fallon and Lisa didn't really hit the ceiling that they have produced, although Bo Greaves did, in some performances, produce some stunning stuff. But I think the players below, they're all improving a little bit. And if you're going to get another system below the PDC, an amateur darts circuit, doing what they're doing and giving the ladies the environment, the competition, then that's only going to breed more and more players. And actually, 3 players coming into the World Championship in future, there is no guarantee that those 3 players next year will be Bo Greaves, Fallon Sherrock and Lisa Ashton. I think there are 3 or 4 other players in the mix.
Do you think the next evolution of the women's series is to maybe allocate a tour card for the winner, like the development tour and the challenge tour, just that continued evolution of it and keep adding things to it?
Possibly, but I don't think that's imminent. I don't think it's something that's probably going to be right around the corner. Lisa, she went and earned a tour card by right. She did pretty well. She almost held on to it. But it's whether they have the tour card and can still play in the women's series like she could. I mean, if they can do that, I don't see any reason why not. But then you do get into the argument of taking places away from players and stuff like that. But I've got a whole, similar to you actually, I've got whole different thoughts on how tour cards should be allocated through the challenge tour, development tour, etc., rather than such a mass amount being given at Q School. Well,
on that Q School thing, I know we started talking about the Worlds, but it's just interesting to pick your brain and your theory on this. What are you expecting from Q School this year in terms of numbers? Because yes, obviously it's great if you get one of those 128s, but the restrictions are also there as well if you're maybe not quite good enough to break that top 64. So I think this year especially there's a real crossroads for players whether they do or they don't do Q School.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the catalyst for a restructure. A lot of players will admit when you interview them that they go to Q School so they can play on the Challenge Tour. Yeah. And I think maybe Q School should almost be for the Challenge Tour. To cap numbers a little bit so that you've got 128, maybe 256 if that's where you want to go with it for the Challenge Tour events, because they can be brutal, 2 in a day. And maybe still give, I don't know, I'm plucking numbers out of thin air here, but 4 tour cards, yeah, something like that, or the top 4 on whatever it is. And then you've got this system where players qualify for Challenge Tour through the Q School ranking points. If they don't qualify for the Challenge Tour, they've got the ADC to play on. And if they only qualify for the Challenge Tour, but they don't get a tour card as one of the top 4 or whatever it might be, then they're still able to play in the other things as well. I think that would suit everybody.
For the first time in a long time, we seem to be getting a bit of an alignment in darts as well, because it's always been a little bit fractured and disjointed from the PDC downwards. It's all been a little bit bricky almost, and things not quite lined up. But the first time in a while, things seem to be aligning for players more.
Yeah, I think there's an understanding that the more competitive darts that people play, the better the tour is in general, the healthier the sport is in general. So I think that everyone knows that, and therefore that's why people are happy to I mean, not necessarily work together, but not work against each other.
Back to the Worlds before we let you go. We've digressed slightly, but it's great picking your brain on things like this. The Worlds, going to put you on the spot. Who wins it?
If you would have asked me yesterday, probably, I might have said Price. But you know what? I'm leaning further and further towards Michael van Gerwen at the moment. The evidence for me is there that he's the man to beat. I'm going to go for him to do well, Michael Smith to do well. But I think Michael van Gerwen's the one who will take the trophy home.
Chris, it's a pleasure as always to pick your own, mate.
Thanks, mate.